What's up, guys? I'm Alex.
I'm Jason. We're the Table Monkeys, and this is Table Talks episode 30.
Wow, we made it to 30.
30 episodes in.
Still no guest.
No, working on it though.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We may have invited to a channel though, which could be pretty cool.
This is true.
We might actually be a guest.
Breaking news.
Before we have guests.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. But we definitely have to work on getting a guest.
Yeah.
I think Lewis would be good.
Lewis would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But anyway,
if he wants to do it.
We'll figure that out at another time. But
Anyway.
definitely guests would be good.
This is Table Talks, where we watch our latest after pulling from practice and talk about random topics, relevant or not.
Usually relevant
Yeah.
to arm wrestling. Today we're going to try to keep it relevant.
Yeah, and you probably just seen me get my ass kicked by this kid on the right hand side.
You were going to say little, and he
I was going to say little, yeah.
He's not looking little, that's for sure.
No.
He's only 165, which we had to throw him on a scale because I wasn't even believing it. I was like, no way, buddy. You're like almost 200 pounds. But no, he's a skinny little 165 with some jacked ass arms and
he has
some ridiculously big hands.
15 years old.
Yeah, from Georgia.
From the land of
Of beasts and freaks. So he's been in Toronto for a while. He's been pulling like a few months, 4 months maybe.
Yeah.
Not super long. I guess he was a swimmer before. And he had a match at BAL 204. And you guys probably saw it. Yeah, it was a good. It wasn't just domination though. Like he had to make some adjustments.
Yep.
He was actually pulling this guy here in the white, Derek Elshaw. Who's trying to have his way with Dustin, Triple D. It's not going so good, but this is a mismatch anyway. But either way, Derek pinned.
He top rolled him in the first round.
Yeah, Alexander in the first round,
and where Alex was trying to get him into a hook.
Yep.
And then round 2, Alex goes up high with him and gets the slip. Yeah. And the straps
stopped it. Yeah. Screamed at him, slammed him. And then Derek didn't want to get to the straps again, so he kind of hung on. And then the top,
the next 2 rounds. Yeah.
When you top roll somebody and then you end up hanging on to the other person's top roll, you're doing what they want, and you're going to end up following them to the pad most likely.
Yeah. So this kid has huge potential.
Yeah.
Again, he's only 15.
Yeah.
Only been arm wrestling a few months.
Yeah. And newer pullers, it's awesome to see the way that we're newer pullers as it is, right? Like being, it's funny that we're like the experienced pullers at our session now because we've been pulling for like a year and a half. But that's like in the arm wrestling world, that's still like complete rookies. Yeah, like most people say you don't find out whether or not you're going to be any good at the sport until you're at least like 3 years in.
Yeah, but I think the sport's changed now just because of the access to information.
Yeah,
there's I think we've gotten good quicker than a lot of people just because of all the YouTube videos we've been able to watch, all the people we've been able to meet, the other practices, and guys coming in today or just have a even faster track to becoming good at the sport.
Yeah, and I think it's also the amount of like athletes, like guys like Larry Wheels and or like this like Mike here, who's a rugby player, really strong, really talented athlete, and then learning how to arm wrestle, and he picks it up quickly because he just knows how to use his body and move his body, which I think we both kind of felt some similar ways for that, like with lifting and stuff, like because we're familiar with how to do certain lifts or how weights are supposed to move or how your body's supposed to feel when you move weights. We were able to kind of learn how to train for the sport kind of quickly.
Yeah, and we both have sports backgrounds as well. So athletes getting into arm wrestling and not just beer drinkers. It's gonna change the game for sure.
And, for sure. Because like I've said it before, it's kind of like arm wrestling kind of has this. It's such a hangout sport. Like it's such a social sport that it kind of feels like a physical version of like horseshoes or darts or pool or something like that. Where you're actually like doing a full contact version of those kind of just chill hangout sports. But it is like there's a lot of physical activity involved in it, but you can also just, like you said, do it while you're hanging out, drinking beer and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting how that's changing the sport maybe a little bit, getting more people into it. and then also just analyzing the sport, like whether it is a strength sport or a combat sport, and like Bob Brown just did that video about strength versus technique.
And Bob Brown shouted us out in the video previous to that.
Yeah, we must shout him out as a thank you for that. That was pretty amazing to have him shout us out as one of the YouTube channels to listen to. I don't even know what to say. You sent me that, like, listen to this video, and then I saw what it was about, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, is he actually going to say us, like, talk about us? And he did, and that was pretty awesome.
Yeah. So, thank you, Bob Brown.
Thanks Bob a lot for that, and thanks for all the videos you've been putting out, because you've been putting out more content, and it's all wicked information.
And that's the beautiful thing about this community lately, is that we've got all these top pullers and experienced guys putting out information. So all the newer pullers are just going to get better and better.
It adds to the pool of information that we have to pick from. To every time you hear somebody explain something, it can grip you a different way, and you understand it a different way. So like having 5 people explain how to set a hook is great, but having 500 people explain how to set a hook is way better. Yeah. You're just gonna, you're gonna find more examples that you relate to.
Exactly.
So I think one of the things he was really talking about is like the difference between European pullers and North American pullers.
Yeah.
And like the strength and technique and all that kind of stuff. And I think that
that's probably related to. So he mentioned in that video how he thinks that Europeans are strong pullers, not very technical, and North Americans are more technical, not very strong.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that comes from the community aspect of how in Europe they're all about strength training and that world, and then in America or in North America they're more about the chill, hangout, beer drinking, and
social aspect
of arm wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly what I was trying to get at with it, is that it's funny how that happens, and I think that does have a lot to do with it, because like in Europe they're much more about like weightlifting and regimen and and the science behind it and the sports science and all that kind of stuff. So he makes that point that they looked at it as a strength sport, so they just decided we're just going to get really strong at it. So they just have figured out how to get really, really, really strong at that sport, where North Americans have figured out maybe how to manipulate the sport more with technique and stuff like that. And the bottom line is it is still a combat sport, which is, I think, a different conversation than whether it's technique or strength, right? I agree that strength is still more important than technique in winning an arm wrestling match. But at whatever point strength becomes close enough, then it becomes a fight and a battle, and then your ability to express different techniques with a certain amount of strength becomes your path to victory.
Yep, exactly. Another point Bob Brown made in that video is that techniques were only created by weaker people trying to beat stronger people, like trying to figure out how to beat them. Like when the top roll was invented to beat the strong hook puller, it was a foul, right?
Yeah,
to start with,
fouls and stuff. Like, you can't do that.
You can't attack their fingers.
But in reality, it's kind of like a blessing, right? As a newer puller, to be the weaker guy, because that's how you're going to learn all these different techniques.
Yeah, I think it's horrible to be the strongest guy in practice, because then you can beat your opponents or your team members by doing anything, and you don't really know where your weaknesses are or what you're doing incorrectly or correctly.
That's why losses are so valuable in this sport, because it's not until you lose that your weaknesses are exposed to you. Like you just said, if you're always the strongest guy in practice, you don't know where you're weak until you get against somebody who just exploits that like crazy, and it takes you like that loss and going through that to even figure out that you need to work on that.
Yeah, so if you're the new guy, be happy that you're the weakest guy there, and try to learn how to be a technical arm wrestler. So as you get stronger and you become more technical along with that, you're just going to have so many options. And when you do meet that opponent who is of equal strength to you, but you're more technical, well, now you have
a
much
more
bigger
cards
chance.
To play. Yeah, exactly. And like you said, it's also like the stronger guys that come in, how that can be kind of a detriment. You think of someone like, he made the point of Richard Lupke's being like the strongest puller possibly ever, as far as just like grabbing your hand and pushing to the side, right? And like just a straight, what people would, like anybody off the street, what they would visualize arm wrestling is supposed to be. And because of that, even now he's got like, whatever 40 years arm wrestling experience, he's still not very technical. technical. Like,
no, he's probably never needed to be.
Yeah, exactly. And he's probably a little more technical than he was when he first started, because people had figured out how to beat him, and so then he might have to like work on something else. But for the most part, because his strength is so superior, his technique still is very lacking. Yeah. And that's why even someone like Taurus used to say he would train like he would do a weight session to get his muscles tired and then do table time after all the weights when he was really tired, so that he couldn't rely on his strength. So he had to rely on technique and body position and that kind of stuff.
Smart.
It makes a lot of sense, right? Because again, like you said, like the strength will come, and that's kind of the thing too, is like what type of strength do you need to work on? You know, like someone like Devin works specifically on arm wrestling strength, arm wrestling specific strength, like hand strength, wrist strength, and that's absolutely it. Where like someone like like Crazy George, for example, he told us that the way that he would like to train, or the way that he trained for the most part, was he would train like weightlifting or powerlifting style movements throughout the week, and then he would just arm wrestle a lot. Yeah. And if you look at like how an MMA fighter would do it, or how like even like baseball and other sports, like if you don't learn to swing a bat and just by swinging a heavier bat become better at batting, you get technically good at batting, and then you train with weights to make your body stronger, so that when you go to bat, you're just stronger at batting.
But you're doing big compound lifts that really get your body strong. You're not doing like micro movements, right?
Exactly, yeah. Like, and it would be the same with fighting, right?
Yeah, so it's like the two different schools of thought there. Like just arm wrestle to get better at arm wrestling and then make your body strong in the gym, or get arm wrestle on the table and then in the gym just do arm wrestling specific training
movements. Yeah. Well, I think for us, like, because our bodies, we strengthened our bodies for a long time, so our hand and wrist is trying to catch up to our body at a huge rate. Like, there's a lot of strength we can't access in our shoulders and back and chest and bicep because we don't have the hand strength for it yet, or we didn't, and we're developing it now, and that's why we're gaining, progressing quickly. Where like someone else, like Devin, maybe his hand is so much stronger than the rest of his body now, that if he actually spent some time training his body, which is kind of like what Michael's doing now, right? Like Michael's still doing his arm wrestling stuff, but because of all that time he spent with Larry, he's actually working on his squats and his bench press and his bent rows and deadlifts, and deadlifts and all that stuff. And I think that there will be some carryover to the table there, because his hand is definitely strong enough to handle whatever horsepower he adds to the rest of his body.
Yeah. And I think cycles are probably the best way to do it. Like, have a period of time where you're doing a lot of strength training, compound movements, not too much arm wrestling, and then another cycle where it's a lot more arm wrestling training and arm wrestling on the table. Yeah. And it's not like Devin has never done traditional strength training before. Like,
no, exactly.
That's how
he did
he used
that
to
for
train.
A long time,
right.
Exactly. And then he probably needed to bring his hand, like he's like, okay, the weak link is my hand. I need my hand to be like the strongest hand that has ever existed, kind of thing. But maybe there's again, like you said, it comes into like cycles, and like are you doing this period or that period of training? And so maybe there's a point where he should period back, or anybody in general, like if you're a newer arm wrestler, you should do periods of more hand and wrist based training, and periods of more like strength based training. That's kind of how I'm planning it moving forward, right? Like, I've been strengthening my hand and my wrist from the moment the surgery, and like the moment I started recovering from the surgery, and the further I get away from the surgery, I'm working less hand and wrist and more general body strength, because I can now, which I haven't been able to for a long time. Like standing curls, I haven't been able to do proper standing curls since long time before the surgery, because it was just too much weird pressure on my core with the hernias and stuff to do it. But now I can do them, so I'm gonna do those, you know what I mean? Where before I would spend so much more time just doing like little wrist and hand movements because I can handle that. Now it's time to periodize away from that for a little bit and strengthen my body. And after a few months or have whatever time period works of doing that, I'll probably cycle back and then start doing more hand and wrist. And
but as a super heavyweight, it's probably even more important that you do cycles of strength training and focusing on just pushing your absolute strength, because that's what the guys at the top are doing, is that they're just incredibly strong. Right. So you're gonna need strength everywhere to be able to match up with them, not just in your hand.
No, exactly. even with all the techniques or the levers and everything, it's like what Bob Brown said. It's like your techniques are only useful if you're strong enough to use them. You know what I mean? And if you're just the strongest guy, then the technique is the simplest one. Like whatever is the simplest technique that you're strong enough to execute is most likely going to be the one that you go with. You know what I mean? And again, that's why it is a fight, because it's about choosing the right weapon for the battle. You know what I mean? It's not just like, yeah, if you have a silver bullet, that's great, but if you're not shooting werewolves, like, it's not going to matter at a certain point. You know what I mean? Like, you need to you need to have the right weapon for the job. Which is why if you only have one weapon, eventually there's somebody out there who beats you. Like Travis is amazing, but then Jerry Cataret just, there's no way. He just can't do it. It just doesn't work, you know? And even like this whole Levon, Michael Todd thing, like Levon is amazing and his fundamentals are unbelievable, but in the way that they train and the way that they understand the King's move, it's like that is his kryptonite. It's clear that like they do not want to even chance it because if his fundamentals break down even just a little bit, they don't know how to deal with that fight. Yeah, they don't know how to deal with that fight. And watching, okay, now we're going to switch topics completely, but did you see Gennadi's explanation of the King's move and how to beat the King's move?
No, I didn't actually.
So he did a video on how to do it and how to beat it, and literally their understanding, like they really think that it's just drop beneath the table and throw your arm up straight. Like, it's crazy how little they understand the technical aspect of the move, and they're always demoing it without a strap. Right, so he's saying all you do is climb up the guy's hand and then press him, and he makes, and it's like he makes it look like so like, look, I show you how simple this technique is, and then he just does it, and it's like, because the guy doesn't have a strap on and doesn't know how to King's move, and if you try to do that against somebody that does know how to do those things, there's no way you're climbing your hand up like that at all, and every time you try to, you're going to lose thumb, and I'm going to gain on your hand, and your arm is going to burn out, and my arm is going to stay fresh. Like they're, again, where they oversimplify.
Yeah, these European arm wrestlers have been arm wrestling for decades.
Yeah, and the techniques are just...
That's why they're so afraid of the King's move.
It is. They are petrified of it. It's crazy. Devin, you're 100% right. 100% right.
Yeah.
That they are afraid of that match, because to see somebody with the unbelievable raw power that Levon has get peeled back and opened up by Todd, like
a 260-pound Michael
50-year-old man almost, like it'll blow their brains up. Like they won't know how to compute it. They're like, no, this is, and just could you imagine the eyebrows on if that happened? Dude. No, but for real though, it's again, it comes down to techniques and fight, and like that was another one of Michael's points, right? Is that like that there's quit.
Yes,
and that's the difference there.
When he was talking about when he watched Vitaly and Hermes, like he saw the quit in both of their eyes when they didn't get what they wanted on the table, and he's like, that's all I need. That's all I need to know that I will not quit against these guys. I have the heart.
And you know what is the perfect example of that is the fucking garage match with Devin.
Oh yeah.
After a BFR workout, after all that stuff, and his hand is gone. Devin's got him beat. He still gets behind his hand.
Devin is elbow fouling like fucking crazy.
He still gets behind his hand and presses through somehow. Like there's that guy he's got a drive and a will to succeed that is
like no other.
It really is like only maybe one other, and on May 29th we're gonna find out who's gonna take away this trilogy, because again it's a fight, and I don't think there's two guys in the sport right now that have more fight in them as those two.
No.
Not more. Maybe a couple guys that are comparable, and I'm not trying to take away from guys like Mask or Jerry and stuff like that, but the fight between those two guys is just awesome. And it's, you know what it is, it's their, like, they know how to fight everywhere. They know how to fight the mental game, they know how to fight on the table. Maybe Todd doesn't know too much about how to fight in the setup, apparently. He's not too versed in like what you're trying to do in the
I guess
setup.
He doesn't need to be. He's just that strong,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, that's
he's
probably
never
what
needed
it is.
to know.
Yeah, that's literally been his answer. His answer is like, okay, I can either learn all those crazy tricks, or I can just make my riser and my pronator so fucking strong that nobody can do anything about it.
Yeah.
And apparently the latter works well, so he has been able to do that. because that's again, it's like Bob Brown said, it's techniques are only needed if you're not strong enough, and strength is still the number one factor to winning, which we've said always. Strength is definitely the number one factor to winning, but it's not a strength sport, it's a combat sport.
Yeah.
You know, and I think just to give a quick explanation or definition of why, like how we define those differently, is the whole idea of an implement or a measurement, right? With like every other strength sport, there is either an object or it's measured by something that is the same across the board.
Yeah. So for example, you're lifting a deadlift bar. It is measured in weight.
Yeah.
And another person can lift the same bar, and you can compare results.
Exactly. Or you're throwing a shot put, and it weighs the same amount, and we're measuring the distance in which we can throw it. Or you're doing a farmer's walk, and it's a certain distance with a certain amount of, or it's a certain amount of weight, and we're seeing who can carry it the furthest distance. Like there's a very measurable way to, and it's always with an object, with something like an implement, like something that we use to measure with, right? Where this is a combat sport because it's one opponent versus another. It's like when Travis was like saying about Levon and his hand shaking at 120 pounds, and he's like, that's all I need to know, because everybody's hand is a different weight. Like I remember saying that very early on. It's like everybody is a different lift. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like you can't just look at it like I do this lift and that's the movement that I do, because everybody is a different bar, everybody is a different handle, everybody is a different lift.
Yep.
And that's the combat end of it, and that's why to us it's so beautiful, right?
Yep. So as a newer puller, if you're out there, experience as many hands as possible.
Yeah.
Fight as many different styles as possible, and that'll help you get better.
There's nothing that'll get you to grow better than that.
Yeah.
I don't think. Yeah. And except for more table monkeys, so make sure to like the video and subscribe
and leave some feedback in the comments
and hit that bell button and
tell your friends.
Yeah. And I think monkeys out.
Yeah. Peace.
All right. See you next time.